as we are going to embark on an amazing discussion about a healthy behavioral change process. We've all done it. We've all set those resolutions. We've all said, this is what I'm going to change in this new year. And so how can you successfully make that change? We're going to have a wonderful discussion today with our panelists. And we're going to help you to embark on a healthier you and a healthier change through the behavioral change process. Good afternoon. My name is Nicola Willie-Fenton. I'm the Content Marketing Manager in UVM's Continuing and Distance Education Department. And we have wonderful guests with us today. I'll do quick introductions in just a moment. This is the agenda. We are going to talk about healthy behavioral change process, the neural underpinnings of positive behaviors, what is going on in your brain to help facilitate that change process. And we're going to talk about UVM's Integrative Health and Wellness Coaching Certificate Program. I do see that we have one of our students that just said hello to the faculty. Hi, Valerie. Thank you so much for being with us. And folks that are joining us as well who are interested in integrative health and wellness coaching. What is that? What are the career opportunities? What is the process to get there? We're going to learn a lot about that today, and it is a field that is growing exponentially, and career paths are seen out there in many different ways for this field. So it's an exciting time to be in integrative health and wellness. Just a few quick logistics. The session is being recorded. We will share the recording out with all of our folks who have RSVP'd. And we also want to make sure that you have your questions in the chat box today. We have a team. Kara, who is also one of the faculty member on the program, is in the chat box, that she will help facilitate questions. And we also have a team member on our side, Kelly, who will help me to ask questions to the presenters. So ask away, we'll keep an eye on them, and we will have many opportunities throughout the presentation to be able to ask those questions. I also wanted to share, stick around to the end, because we have an opportunity for you to showcase what you learned today. We have a digital badge for your participation. There's a lot of information that you're going to get today. We want you to be able to showcase that in your social media platforms, whichever platforms you prefer, that this is important to you, and you have a digital badge for your participation today. So stick around so you can learn about that opportunity. So our panelists today are all faculty in UVM's Integrative Health and Wellness Coaching Certificate Program. They have other roles as well, but that's the program in particular we're going to talk about. Susan Whitman joins us as well. She is a lecturer for the Integrative Health and Wellness Program at UVM. She is a consultant for the Health Coaching Program, a mentor for Duke Health Coaching Program, and co-founder of the Richmond Community Kitchen. Susan, thank you so much for being with us. We're going to hear from her in just a moment. And David Tomasi, he has been so fortunate to join us on other webinars that we've done talking about mental health and how we can support all of us and our children during the COVID-19 crisis. Thank you, David, for joining us once again. He is a clinical psychologist and psychotherapist at the University of Vermont Medical Center and a lecturer in our UVM College of Nursing and Health Sciences, Integrative Health and Wellness as well. David, thank you so much, Dr. Tomasi, for being with us once again today. We're going to hear from him in a moment. And finally, rounding out our panel is Karen Westervelt. Karen is an educational program director for the Integrative Health and Wellness Program, clinical assistant professor, health and wellness coach, and physical therapist and athletic trainer. And thank you, Karen, for taking the time today to be able to share your experience in the program and how this program can benefit many people. So let's get going. I know there's a lot to go through today and lots of great information for everyone. We're going to start with Susan. And Susan, let's walk through what is the healthy behavioral change process.
Well, thank you, Nicole. It's really great to be here. Thank you so much for having me here. And I'm really excited to talk for a few minutes about one of my favorite topics, behavioral change. I will talk about this for hours if I could. And I'm a primary care and urgent care PA, and I did that for just under a decade. And my biggest frustration was that I spent so much time managing medications for chronic disease. And these were often related to lifestyle choices. I couldn't figure out why people weren't getting better. My healthcare practice, as well as my personal life, where I have two very strong-willed boys, I've learned that behavior change doesn't happen because I tell someone to do something. In fact, in the case of my boys, telling them what to do often backfires. So I've really spent the last decade studying behavior change as a health coach. And I've started to understand a little bit more about why we do what we do and how to make changes to patterns that have become habits in our lives. And I'm here to say it's not easy. There isn't a silver bullet. There isn't a single trick that we can do. And as I tell my students often, there are no failures in the behavior change process. There's only moments that we can learn from. So my hope today is that you're going to walk away with a little bit of a spark, a little inspiration in some way, perhaps maybe an idea of something that you'd like to do. Because right now, it is so easy to get overwhelmed in our world. We'll look around and think of all the things that we want to have different. But for today, we're really just looking inwards, just to ourselves. So taking a moment, the new year is a good time for introspection. It's a time to look at our life and say, okay, what's working? Where might I want to make a change in my life? So I invite you to take that moment right now. Perhaps grab a piece of paper. When you signed up for this webinar, was there something that you were thinking about? Is there an area that you might like to make a change in? Perhaps jot that down on a piece of paper. What is it that you want to be making a change in? Not what you think someone else wants you to do, because that's not always going to work. Something that you really want to make a change in. That's an important part. So when someone visits a health coach, it's often because they want to make a change and they just need a little extra support. So the first step in our process is to take stock, kind of do a self-assessment. We think really deeply about what's going on in your life, and we think about the different areas. We use what's called a wheel of health. And we think about all these different areas of our health. It's not just nutrition and exercise. And we think about how they affect each other. So for me, when my nutrition is off and I'm eating too much sugar, it's affecting my relationships. I get cranky, I get short, my resiliency is gone. And when I don't exercise or sleep well, the same thing happens. Conversely, when my relationships are feeling strong, I feel supported in my exercise routine. I feel like I have a more positive attitude. All these areas are interconnected. So we really sit down and take stock. So it's something that you can do for yourself, is just, how are you doing in all of these areas? And how are those goods and not so good areas affecting other parts? So that's the first step, really, is that we start to kind of think about what's really happening in our life. The next step is to dream. And we dream big in health coaching. We think about the future and where you'd like to be. And often we think of this little trick of imagining two different paths. So if you were to think about that behavior change that you just wrote down, and think one pathway might be, imagine yourself in a year or 2 or 3 if you didn't make a change in an area. What might your life look like? If you did not do what was going on there, think about what your life might look like. Perhaps maybe jot down 3 words of what that future might look like for you. So as you think about that and you fully embody that, then perhaps we think of the other path. What would happen? How would your life be different if you did make a change in that area? Thinking of maybe 3 words that might describe how your life would be different if you did make a change in that area. So often the words that we're writing down are our values, their emotions, their feelings. They're something that is going to help us think about how to stick with our behavior change. These are the things that we want to remember, because our emotions and our feelings are really what are going to help motivate our behaviors. So when we're making a behavior change, it often starts with this should. I should lose weight. I should quit smoking. I often think of this as our head talking. It's kind of this rational, logical thinking, and that can only get us so far. When push comes to shove, our emotional side often wins out. University of Virginia psychologist Jonathan Haidt uses an elephant and rider analogy. So our rational thinking part of our brain is kind of the rider. It's the one that says, you know what, I'm not going to eat any more sugar. By next week, I'm going to get these cravings under control. In 6 months, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. And the rider can direct the elephant for like a certain amount of time. But eventually the rider gets exhausted and our emotional instinctive side, that elephant kind of takes over and it says, I want a cookie, and it's all over. So in order to make lasting sustainable change, we need to appeal to those elephants too. We can't just be in our head saying, I need to do this, I should do this. That's why New Year's resolutions don't last as much. So resolutions are often the rider and our head directing the show. So we need to think about the elephant, our why. So exercising might be what I'm doing, but being able to keep up with my kids on the ski slopes and enjoy family time, well, that's my why. That's why I'm doing this. One of my favorite TED Talks is Simon Sinek's, and he talks about people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So he goes on to say that people weren't inspired by Martin Luther King Jr.'s because I have a, they weren't motivated by him because he said, I have a plan. He said, I have a dream. And that is what motivated people. So the same applies really to health coaching and behavior change. So in order to make a change, you can't just need to make a plan, you need to have a dream as well. Try to find sometimes finding your spark or your heart story. So why do you want to lose weight? What's important to exercise? Think back to those 3 words that you wrote down. Some of those might be a clue to your why. So that's what we do in health coaching. We kind of self-reflect. We help people find their why or their elephant, but we still do need to work on a plan. Plans are important. So we appeal to the rider as well. So we help them come up with a plan that's going to work for them. And a few tips that I have in making plans. Think of your thing that you wrote down. Was it an outcome or a behavior? When the goal is, I want to lose 10 pounds or I want to be less stressed, think about it. Can you really just wake up this morning and say, I'm going to lose weight today? Or I'm just going to be less stressed? In coaching, we really encourage our clients to keep those outcomes in mind, but think about what behavior is actually going to get us there. So we help them make a more specific goal, something we call a SMART goal. So we help them change that, I want to lose 10 pounds, which is an outcome, to I'm going to eat more fruits and vegetables, which is a behavior, to an even more specific SMART goal of, I'm going to eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. So we might think that's good enough, and we say, okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to eat 5 servings of fruits and veggies. But if we start big, we are often setting ourselves up for failure as well, because in his book, Tiny Habits, B.J. Fogg talks about tiny steps. So what's the smallest thing that you can do that still has meaning that you can do starting today? So maybe that first step is making a list of your favorite fruits and vegetables or brainstorming with your family. So we break down these big, huge goals that we have into really small, manageable goals. So it could be this week, I'm going to have 1 serving of veggies every day, or I'm going to buy a bag of apples and put them on the counter. That could be your first step. So we start small, and the positivity of making that change and succeeding in that tiny little step builds upon itself. So as you've noticed today, health coaches, we're not really experts in a particular area. We really aren't coming up with a perfect exercise routine for anyone or giving you advice on what to eat, but really working on behavior change. So health coaches also have another important aspect of embodying unconditional positive regard, is what I like to say, which is accepting people exactly as they are and believing fiercely in their potential. We believe our clients really have everything they need to make a change. And we also help them find the information when they do need education. We all need to learn a little bit about something every once in a while. So a health coach listens deeply, non-judgmentally, and utilizes those motivational interviewing techniques. So this article that you can find, and we can put a link as well, in the Washington Post just came out in December, and it has a really good explanation about what health coaches are and what they do. So my take-home message for you is find your motivation, start with your why, and turn that focus of your into a behavior that you can actually do. Move just 1 small stone to start. Other important things to remember, asking for help doesn't mean that you failed or that you're weak, that we all need help and support as we make these changes. And lastly, I believe in you. You can do this.
And I think, too, accountability. I think about the buddy. I think about somebody that you it's the wellness coach, but it's also a friend. It's, I'm going to embark on this change, and can I reach out to you to say, oh my gosh, I really would like to have that snack at 9 o'clock. How How about we chat instead? You know, I think that's so important to recognize that it is really hard to do yourself as well. And I think that's a lot of what the premise is behind the integrative health and wellness coaching. Do you, in the process of working with people, Susan, do you recommend that step of finding somebody that can kind of help you along the way?
One of the questions we often ask is how do you want to bring accountability to this? What type of support do you need? So that is a question. And oftentimes, yeah, people think they have to be super strong and that if they can't do it on their own, there's something wrong with them. And that is not true. The only way that I ever got into an exercise routine is when I had a friend coming to my house every day, dragging me out of bed. And I was like, that was the only way that it happened. And that was what worked for me. So it's figuring out what works for you. Is it that you need that little extra push? It's like getting the ball rolling. Do you need a little extra someone aside with you to get that ball started, and then it will start to roll on its own?
I think another thing to keep in mind, which I've tried to learn myself, is just that so many of the times that you're making a behavioral change, that's a long process. It took a long time probably to get to that behavior that you're trying to change. So it's not going to happen overnight. And I suspect Dr. Tomasi might talk to us a little bit about that. Susan, do you want to just introduce what Dr. Tomasi is going to talk about next, and then we'll move on?
I have learned so much from Dr. Tomasi already just in the year that we've been working together. His studies on the neural underpinnings, which is a word I'd never heard of before, but that he now use all the time. The neural underpinnings of positive behavior change is fascinating. I'm really excited to hear what Dr. Tomasi is going to present with us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. A wonderful presentation, as usual. I would like to start this little examination of what actually our brain is doing when we are attempting to change our behavior by taking a step back. So I'm trying to focus on the intersection between positive psychology and neuroscience. And the reason why I'm doing this is because, first of all, knowing there's something material that is happening actually in our bodies gives us a little more understanding, as well as a little bit of a positive push to achieve our goals, because we know there is something like a matter-based tool that we can utilize. And on the other side, it also helps us working on our self-esteem overall. So before we continue, I just want to stress this important factor. There are possibly two wrong ways to look at the mistakes we can make in order to achieve a positive behavior. One is thinking that nothing is under our control, and the other one is to think that absolutely everything is our responsibility. So let's see how that works. So there are three main aspects of this brief discussion I would like to focus upon today. Basic neural mapping, the fact that change is indeed possible, and how. Since we're talking about theory, we're talking about neuroscience, I also want to give you some strategies and some advice, some suggestions of how to achieve this goal. All right, so by neural underpinnings really mean a neural correlates. What is the brain doing while we are actually thinking about a possible change in behavior? So that's the main focus on this discussion. So the first slide has to do with a broad map of what I'm trying to explain here. It's a fundamental concept. So I would like for now to focus on the top line, the three main terms. On your left side, personality in blue, thought at the center in gray, and finally temperament on the right-hand side in red. So personality and temperament are two terms that in psychology have been used and misused multiple times to define things that are part of our genetic makeup, things we cannot change, as well as things that have to do with what we can learn. And so the existential question here is, are we a blank slate, and when we are born we are completely empty and just ready to be filled with information, experiences, relationship? Or is the opposite? We are born with a certain package and we can only move around those terms. The answer, of course, lies in between these two poles, and that's kind of explained toward the bottom of the scheme with nature nurtures, the usual nature nurture debate. But let's see how we can go from thoughts to changing our behavior. So a thought philosophical reason aside, is a neurological and psychological process that occurs when we focus our attention on a certain term. There are many, many different types of attention, but a thought is, for the most part, what we could consider an idea, right? Now, if we repeat these thoughts over time, what we observe is a cognitive pattern, multiple thoughts of the same category, of the same kind, repeated over time. Now, this creates, both neurologically speaking, as well as in terms of psychological behavior, a series of chain reaction, a pattern, a cause-effect reaction. So we tend to be associating progressively our sense of self with this chain, right? For instance, if we are thinking that, we wake up in the morning, we have one of those so-called automatic thoughts, and we already think that the day will end up badly, okay? We have this sensation, cannot quite quantify that. And we have a few images associated with that thought. The day will be bad because we want to exercise and we already know we're going to fail. Or we had a deadline and we already know that we're going to be late for that deadline, right? We set our mode in that way. And we follow up with actions. So that's kind of the interesting thing. Some of you might have read some either pop psychology literature or New Age literature that talks about the law of attraction, for instance. But from the scientific perspective, rather than thinking in New Age terms, we can think of what's happening actually in our brain. The fact that the more you think about something, the more you're going to evaluate that something, and we'll see that how in a few seconds. And then this something will define your rhythm, your pattern, and therefore the way you're going to act upon that. The same thing happens with action. You start from one single action, and multiple action in a sequence becomes a behavioral pattern. So at this point, this is when we're talking about behavioral change. It's something that's been already being implemented for days, weeks, months, most likely years or decades, and we need to break the change, okay? This change can only occur when we are willing to change something about our very sense of self, the person's life together, right? And of course, in psychology, we take a very behavioristic approach. We talk about thoughts, we talk about behavior, we talk about patterns. But at the bottom of this slide, I left room for what I call the third element, which is exactly what Susan talked about in reference to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the fact that we had to focus on a dream, on something bigger than just the structure, what we're going to do next. This third element can be any motivation that can come from peers, that can come from family, social, cultural background, that can come from a spiritual sense of self or religion, can be coming from a lot of different areas, but it's the main pool for what we're going to do next. Now that we understood this very basic positive psychological area, let's see what is happening in our brain. In the next slide, I utilized an image that I took from a recent study by Kringelbach and Barrage that has to do with positivity, pleasure, and happiness in the brain. Now, it's not that relevant whether you're able to see the very minute detail in every single brain diagram here. I just want to focus on some very, very basic notion here. One of the things that a lot of us might struggle with is the gap between thinking about implementing a change and actually following up with that, especially in the long run. So there are several neural correlates to this struggle. And this is something that I always find quite intriguing and also motivating in itself, because it tells us that, well, A, we are all made up by the same matter. Okay, so there's a very holistic approach to it. We are given the same tools. And B, that those tools are ours. After all, the brain is ours, so we can use them to our own advantage. So without digging too deep in every single part here, I want to focus on this brief list of neural areas. Right? I call them positive neural areas for two main reasons. They're positive because they will make us feel better, more empowered, and healthier. But also they're positive because they're posited. So there is something that is based on a fact, something that's observable. All right? Now, I'm not going to read all of them. I just want to focus on the three main, the broader areas, so the sensory motor regions. All right? So the the intersection between our parietal lobe right here and the frontal lobe, the pleasure region, cortical elements and the stress response, the amygdala, the hypothalamus, and the social cognitive regions. Now, to give you a general shortcut to understand what we're trying to do here, think about when we are trying to change a behavior that we already judge as negative and we want to change it for the positive. What our brain is doing is working on what we call the positive or negative prediction error. In practice, for instance, if we are given every day, every morning, let's say, bread and milk, for instance, okay? We might like that very much or not, okay? But if we are given the choice between bread and milk and a cake, for instance, assuming that we like cake, assuming we like sugar, that pull of the cake will be stronger than the bread, unless the cake is offered every single day, 3 times a day. And at that point, there's an assimilation process that is counteracting what our previous expectation was, novelty, intriguing element, okay? So if we are assuming that things in life will turn out to be good, and they indeed do, we have what we call the positive prediction error. If instead it turned out to be that way, we have the negative prediction error. Now, this part of modulating property is the responsibility of the ventral medial prefrontal cortex, which, and this is the last thing, works in cooperation with the rest of the cortical area, but especially the anterior cingulate cortex, which is one of the elements that I included in the previous slide. That is the, in a positive term, the moralizing part of the brain. It's analyzing the cost, benefit, and action reward part of the brain. So here's what's happening. Before we rationalize or philosophize about doing any type of change, we have to understand that we can learn by experience. So it's going to be the experience itself that will nurture the brain to make itself feel better. And as a result, our thoughts will be more positive. At that point, you almost won the game because you already have a neural correlation to a sense of holistic well-being. And so the last portion is just a further implementation of what the brain already perceived as happy before you did it. And so with this last notion, I simply want to encourage the people that are listening to us to contemplate a change of behavior as a change of self. You will not only experience the positive results from a physical, psychological, social standpoint in attempting to change the behavior, but the very fact that you're working on change of behavior will make you feel better.
Dr. Tomasi, thank you so much. Important to realize that you really do have control over this, and I appreciate you stating that our brain is a tool and we need to figure out how to make that work to our best advantage, and also I think having patience with ourselves to realize that we need to reinforce those positive behaviors and retrain the brain a little bit into some of those behavior changes. So thank you very much for sharing that. We have a lot more to get to, because thinking about how you can do this change, the why and what happens in your brain and your body to be able to embark on a change, and now the support element, as we talked about, accountability and support is so key to making a lasting change. So we really wanted to share with everyone today more about UVM's Integrative Health and Wellness Coaching Program. It's an incredible program, and we do have, and I'd love to have in the chat box any of our current students or former students just to say hello and that you participate in this program, and maybe how some of the learning from this program can help to make behavior change. What are some of the things that you experienced in the program that you could share with our participants and our viewers today that aren't maybe familiar with the program? That would be a wonderful addition. I know we have Valerie with us, and I think Kirsten is with us today too, and lots of people that are involved in the program. In the meantime, I would love to have Karen please tell us about this program and the career opportunities. This is not only a program that can help you to be healthier, but it can help you potentially take a different change in your own life in terms of your work.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you, David and Susan. I always learn so much from listening to you, so it's a pleasure to teach with you in our program. So we have a integrative health and wellness coaching program. This is our website that we started accepting students about 1.5 years ago. We are very pleased that we're a National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching approved educational provider. So students who take our curriculum, pass it, can go on and sit the national board exam and become nationally certified health and wellness coaches. And this is a growing field. It's just as Nicole, as you just said, it's an exciting new area in healthcare. We started this program because there was a tremendous need. Our healthcare system is facing so many lifestyle diseases that are costing us tremendous amounts of money. And we need a provider who can come in and really be an expert in the behavioral change process and guide people through this process. And this is where health and wellness coaching comes in. And that's where this is a relatively new, evolving profession, so it's a relatively new program here for us. This is an article that I published last month with some colleagues, and if I just read that opening sentence here of our paper, lifestyle diseases are the major cause of morbidity and mortality in the United States. Lifestyle diseases cause 71% of deaths globally, ranging from 37% of deaths in low-income countries to 88% of deaths in high-income countries such as the United States. So we're talking about things such as cardiovascular disease, stroke, cancer, diabetes, lung disease. That's the type of things that a healthy lifestyle can make a huge difference in preventing those conditions in the first place, and then guiding somebody into a state of wellness. So this is where health and wellness coaches come in, and so that's why here at the University of Vermont we said this is an important program that we want to bring. So we train people in an integrative approach to health and wellness care. As Susan mentioned, we look at the wheel of health, and this is a focus on 9 areas of someone's health that affect their health as a whole person. So we teach an approach that is integrative and looks at all those areas. And then if I just describe the curriculum just a little bit in case you're curious, like, well, how long would this take me to do and what's involved? We have 2 semesters of required curriculum. We start the people off with a weekend of wellness, and then they jump right in with Dr. Tomasi with a motivational interviewing course, and then with Susan on a skills, health coaching skills lab class, really interactive classes. Second semester, we jump in with an advanced course in motivational interviewing with Dr. Tomasi, and then an advanced health coaching course with Susan. And then we wrap up with a weekend intensive together where it's a weekend of wellness. After that second semester, our students can begin health and wellness coaching in the community. And as they do that, we put them on an Integrative Practitioner Network website so community members can access. I'd like to work with a UVM health and wellness coaching student, and I'd like somebody to guide me through the behavioral change process. So our students can be found on that Integrative Practitioner website, along with probably about 200 other integrative providers of all different disciplines. After our students have completed those 8 credits and practice coaching in the community, they're eligible to sit the national board exam. So they become nationally board certified health and wellness coaches. And that's pretty exciting. That's a relatively new credential. So it's a fairly valuable credential that's coming up in the healthcare system. And then our curriculum is quite special because we go on. We give students the option to take electives after that point, where they can study in particular areas or disciplines that they might want to work in as a health and wellness coach. So if someone's particularly interested in working in a health and wellness clinic, or they're particularly interested in working in employee wellness, or they want to work with people with addictive behaviors. So our health and wellness coaches can go on and work in many different areas. So we offer a variety of specialty classes where they can say, yes, this is a population I'd like to understand how to work with better. The next several slides are some of our fantastic students who we think just the world of, and they're doing amazing things. So our curriculum is experiential, has a lot of experiential learning in it. So this right here is Nora, and she's in the teaching kitchen pre-COVID. She doesn't have a mask on in that picture. And learning the art of culinary medicine, and how to use food as medicine. Nora is, she's just about to graduate studying health sciences, and she went on and did an internship with the Vermont Department of Health and is focusing on worksite wellness. So that's just one area where health and wellness coaches can work. This is another one of our almost graduates. This is Casey. She's studying exercise science, and she has an armful of food after being in a culinary medicine class in the teaching kitchen. And we asked her, what did you like best about our curriculum? She said, well, I really love the hands-on learning part and the experiential learning that this curriculum has. So we feel if someone is going to go and learn how to work with people in the community and help people doing healthy behavioral changes, they actually need to get right into that. And so our curriculum does have a lot of experiential learning in it. This is a particularly wonderful student right here. This is Eileen. She is one of our non-traditional students. And I have to say, she's amazing. She is a healthcare provider at the local hospital and has come into our curriculum because she wanted to learn this new skill set. And I might have to take a minute to read her quote. It's just wonderful. As a non-traditional continuing distance education student who was nervous about returning to the classroom, I have really appreciated how invested the instructors are in providing the highest quality instruction and national board exam preparation. I've always been responsive and available to help students. So again, she's in our teaching kitchen right there. A couple of the other experiential classes that we have, and we're looking at the whole integrative approach and the wheel of health, is we offer classes in mind and body. So yoga, mindfulness. So Janet here is a continuing education student, and she's talking about the health coaching that she's been doing with community members, and talks about her favorite moment in the health coaching process is the beginning of every session. She involves her client in a mindful breathing and awareness exercise, which is pretty typical of a coaching session. And it allows both of us to let go of our outside thoughts and stressors, relax our bodies and mind, and feel more fully present. I think all of us would probably like to do that more of the time. And that's a wonderful way to start a session. This is a picture of our students doing a NIA class down at the Burlington Surf Club at the waterfront. And physical activity and movement is a huge part of our health and wellness. So I have a fantastic quote from Valerie here. She is a wonderful CDE student who works with veterans and is particularly interested in taking her health and wellness coaching skills to do more work and help veterans. But the UVM Integrative Health and Wellness Coaching Certificate Program has provided an avenue for self-discovery and self-growth, while at the same time allowing me to learn the skills to support others on their path to whole health and wellness. So we do try to do that. We look out for our students' health, because as healthcare providers, their health is important. It's hard to help somebody if you haven't worked on your own exploration. So this is our Integrative Practitioner Network. This is just a screenshot of that. I have the link at the end of our slides today if you're interested. You can find over 200 integrative practitioners on this website, including the UVM Health and Wellness Coaching students who are collecting hours and practicing health and wellness coaching. So if you have been inspired to make a healthy behavioral change and think, yeah, I think it would be helpful if I had a health and wellness coach guide me through this process, you can find coaches on our site, as you can find other providers as well. This is some satisfaction data. As our students are working with community members, we wanted to know how well it was working. And so the graph on the left might be a little difficult to see, but it just is, would you recommend working with a UVM health and wellness coach? And we had all the responses were somewhat likely to very likely. And then I think the other, even more important for what we're talking about today, is as a result of being coached by a health and wellness coach, has your health or well-being improved? And we had 100% response that yes. Having somebody who could help guide me through this healthy behavioral process has helped improve my own health and well-being. So that's our goal. That's the goal of the profession. Now, Nicole, I think you asked me for, well, what exactly does a health and wellness coach do? And if I become one of these, where might I work? So that's what this one's about. Integrative health and wellness coaches, they partner with clients to make healthy behavioral changes using a whole person approach. And we honestly, and Susan mentioned this, believe that each client is an expert in their own lives. And the lifestyle changes that we work with are really centered around the individual's values. So that's why this system works. It's very different from being told what to do. And instead, it's a very individually centered approach to the behavioral change process. Health and wellness coaches work in a variety of settings. People can go into private practice. They might work in employee wellness settings, fitness centers, community centers, certainly medical offices. I did put one exciting fact I wanted to share with everyone today, and that was last year, 2019, well, a little more than last year now, the American Medical Association granted Category 3 CPT codes for health and wellness coaching. So these are billing codes. So that means that soon health and wellness coaches working in medical offices may be able to bill for their services. So that's a pretty exciting piece, and also a fairly good recognition from the American Medical Association of the value of having a behavioral change expert as part of the healthcare team. So just to wrap up, just a couple summary slides here, thinking back to how Susan started us off. If you're thinking of making a healthy behavioral change, it can be helpful to create a vision. What do I want my health to look like? And then think about taking a small action step. Is there one small thing that I can do that's based on a behavior I can change that I feel I could be successful at? And that brings us to Dr. Tomasi's talk on, well, if you can be successful at making one small change, then that can excite the positive neural area in your brain. And that reward system can allow you to keep on going and continue to work towards a larger goal. And sometimes this process is challenging. We all, as we probably thought when Susan started us off today, yeah, there's something I'd like to change about my lifestyle or behavior I'd like to change. So we all have those things, but actually making that change is difficult. So sometimes working with somebody like a health and wellness coach can really help make that process more successful. So that's the next thing to consider, actually working with a UVM Integrative Health and Wellness Coach. And perhaps some of you are actually considering becoming health and wellness coaches yourselves. If you are, I have a slide for you too. and we put up our website. There's lots of information on our website. We have advisors through continuing distance education who'd be happy to talk to you, answer questions about the program. You complete a short online application and then you start classes and you're on your way. So there we go. Here's a couple of the resources I mentioned. Our Integrative Health website, the Integrative Practitioner Network, where you can find health and wellness coaches to work with, and then the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching, our certifying agency.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen. There we go. Didn't want to get any feedback. So thank you, everyone, for such insightful information. And I just want to go back for just a moment to that slide, because I think, you know, what we have all learned, we've all tried various successes and failures, I'm sure, in starting some change on your own. And I really appreciate what Susan was saying in the beginning as well, is to what do I want my health to look like? Why am I doing this? And what do I hope to accomplish with it? And what I was really taking away from this is, what are some things that I will see in my life that could change as a result of this? And then how do I integrate that into real positive thinking and change some of the positive neural areas of my brain? So you have the power to do this. That's the most amazing thing that I think about. And then when you think about the support of the integrative health and wellness coaching and wellness coaches that probably many people didn't even know are available out there today, you have support to be able to do this together. I did want to ask a question. Dr. Tomasi, I know he and I were back and forth a little bit in the chat. I wanted to have you address this question from Claudia. Claudia asked how to combat addictive behavior, TV watching, food addiction, alcohol, drug addiction. And maybe Susan, maybe come to you afterwards too, because I'm sure you've seen some of this in your practice, and what are some tips that you have seen that have worked? So Dr. Tomasi, we'll start with you.
I want to restate the fact that change is always possible. Can you hear me?
Yes, great, thank you.
Good. So there are more similarities than differences between all these addictive behaviors that Claudia mentioned in her question. The main differences are predicted upon differences in chemistry. However, all things considered, there's a lot of things we can do to either prevent the addiction from happening in the first place, or targeting the addiction so that we don't have to be victim of this addiction in time to come. One good analogy that I like to use many times in my treatment with my patients, the analogy of an apple. So, for instance, let's assume that a person has a very high bleached sugar type of diet, and this person is being given an apple. The apple itself will not taste that sweet at that moment because the person is overstimulated, chemically speaking, by the food intake. But if the person can allow themselves to take a break for 24 to 72 hours, doesn't take a lot, the same apple will taste extremely more sweet in comparison to the previous experience. And that applies to every other sense. Another example could be music. If a person is goes to very frequently to concerts in which the music is played at a high decibel rate, 100 plus decibel, then anything that's whispered or even something like classical music might not be as stimulating. But if the person is allowing themselves to spend just one day in complete silence, the same level of audio electric stimulation will be perceived as more beneficial. And so what I'm trying to say here is that anything helps in terms of whatever position a person might be on the stages of change model. As long as you are contemplating a change, you're already putting something in motion. And once you put something in motion, things will improve because your system will make you feel that are improving. So things that previously might not have been that stimulating or even just happiness producing, and that's why a person would have had to use alcohol or drugs or TV or screen time to overcompensate the lack of interest or stimulation, they will not have to do that anymore because there's enough stimulation arising from the fact that there's a detoxification process that will occur. The other element that I want to mention here very quickly is addiction has to do with, again, reconceptualization of self. You're reinventing yourself. You're seeing yourself removing all the extra layers that the addiction put on you, so you're free again. And a good analogy will be looking at oneself in a mirror, but even better, in a source of water. It can be a well, it can be a bucket full of water. If the bucket itself keeps shaking, then you will not be able to see a clear picture of yourself because the refraction image will be compromised. But if you make peace in your heart and you still, then you will see your image reflected. This, from the neurological perspective, is exactly equivalent to the electrochemical response that our neurotransmitters utilize to make addiction more or less possible.
And what good timing, too, because Derek put in the chat that he heard this quote I have been hanging on to, and it says, you have to outlast the old you to become the new you. So Excellent point, Derek. Thank you. I think that echoes what Dr. Tomasi was sharing. Karen, do you want to, or Susan, either one of you want to offer a little bit of perspective on this as well?
I can jump in. One of my favorite analogies is I think of a trail in the woods, and this trail in the woods is the way that we walk every day, and that becomes this really well-worn path in the woods. And any time that you're saying, well, actually, this isn't the path that I want to be on, you have to kind of go into the weeds. You have to go into the brambles. You have to hack your way around to build a new path. And that's what's really hard about behavior change, because, and what you might do is you might one day go out and hack a few branches down and then go back to your pathway that you're here. And then you might go back and you hack a few more things down. And then you slide back. You're like, oh, it's getting too hard. So, it's repeated times of just going back and making small little changes. And eventually you'll have this other path in the woods. And the thing is, though, even when you get that new path, that old path is still there. It's going to start to grow over, but at any point you could get back and go onto that old pathway again. There's a lot that's going on with behavior change, and it's so easy, especially when it's been a habit or a pattern or an addiction with time. That's the super highway. That's the easy way to go. So.
Wonderful analogy. Thank you very much. I'll hang on to that one too. Karen, I just want to give you the opportunity if there's something that you wanted to add from your perspective as well.
I think they got it. We're good.
Okay. So I just wanted to, as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm going to zip through some of these slides here for a second. I hope you've learned steps that you can take, feel a little more empowered that this is difficult, but it is possible. And you have the tools inside of you to be able to do that. And then also working with a wellness coach and learning about our Integrative Health and Wellness Coach program is such an amazing next step for you as well. And also showcase what you learned today. We have a digital badge for your participation, and you can use it in a variety of different ways. People like to put them on their LinkedIn profile. They like to share them out on their social media channels, wherever you like to spend time on social channels to share, this is important, I'm embarking on a change, I've learned about this. So we wanted to share that with you for taking the time to be with us today. It's really easy. We will share a link to the way to claim the badge in the follow-up email. And we will make sure that you get that with a recording as well. And we'll include the slides because I know there's lots of great information and people often want to go back and take a look at that again. So thank you, everyone, for the time that you took to join our panelists today. Dr. Tomasi, Susan, and Karen, and Kara, who I know is in our chat box, who is also so key to our Integrative Health and Wellness program. Thank you all for taking the time, sharing this information, and we wish all of you good health and wellness in the new year. Have a great afternoon.